Start over. So today we're going to be talking about the final project for this course. I will give all of the instructions for the final project, and if by the end of watching this lecture, whether or not it's in person or online, if you still do not have a group for the project and you are not crazy, please email me about finding a group, because it's going to be a lot of work if you try and do it alone. A lot of work. Like, probably more than you're expecting. It's meant to be done by 4 people. So it might be 4 times as much work as you want. And if you don't pass the project, you don't pass the course. It's very important. Okay? Treat this like a final exam in any other course. So here is the repo for the project. I'm going to zoom in a second, but before I do, the reason I don't zoom in is because of this button here. So hand up if you've ever used GitHub before. Okay, thankfully I didn't see a hand not up. It's very easy. If you're using Windows or Mac, you can actually download GitHub Desktop, and you never actually have to type a command into the command line. That would be a shame, but you can do it all through the UI if you really want to. So here, this GitHub repo is what's called a template repo. So rather than having to clone this and then make your own repo, you can just click this green button, click Create New Repository, and then you give it a repository name, and then you click on Private. Okay, that's the important part here, is that your repo is private and only shared with your group members. If I find it online, I'm going to ask you to take it down, or make it private. And so please just make it private. The source code for your project should not be public for everyone to see. And then you click Create Repository, and then you have the entire repository for your project done. Okay, it's done. All the instructions are in the repo. There's basically nothing left other than coding after that. So I've made this process as easy as possible, and hopefully you're able to do that without issue. All you will need is a GitHub account in order to do that. And everyone here probably has one already. So let's zoom in now so you can actually read this. Hopefully this is readable to you. So let's go through all the readmes. So first, here are the instructions that I just gave out, but in text form. So click Use this template, green button at the top right of the repo. Create a new private repository from this template. Then add these 2 users as collaborators on your project. That is me and the TA for the course, so we can see your code. Then what you have to do is the only project-related thing that goes on D2L is that there is an assignment Dropbox where it's a text-only submission, and what you are going to do is submit the URL to the repo in that Dropbox. Okay, so you go to assignment, there'll be project GitHub repo URL, D2L assignment Dropbox, you submit your URL. Only 1 person per group needs to do that, and I'll show why in a second. Then, click on the pencil icon in the top right of this section to edit straight from the GitHub website. So you don't need to pull the repo in order to edit this README file. And then edit the README to include your group info and remove this instruction section. Okay, so I don't need to see those instructions, so you can remove them. So down here, you will replace all of these with your group member names and their student IDs and email addresses. So again, make this private so all of that information isn't just floating out there on the internet. Then as you complete things, you will be submitting them to the repo, and then also your project demo YouTube video will be here as a YouTube URL. Your project trailer, when you're finished the project, will be here, and your project presentation will be here. So that is where you will submit the URLs. Please don't make me hunt around the repo and send the group emails and wonder why after the due date this is still blank, because sometimes people put this is in like a text file in the code or something like that. No, please put them there. And please put the instructions on how to compile and run your project here. Now, those instructions should basically be download it, compile it, and run it like any other assignment, but please just put that there just so in case there is anything weird, put it there. So what you will do in order to do that is just click this edit button at the top of the README, and just have a look, have a quick Google on the Markdown language that is used for GitHub to style this stuff. And so if you want to make a header, for example, it's one hashtag or pound symbol, whatever you want to call it. And then in order to make a bullet list, you have star or asterisks or dashes or whatever. Just go look up the markup language. So what you'll do is you will remove those instructions and edit these to contain your group names, your student numbers, etc. And then all you have to do once you're done is click Commit Changes, and you'll be able to commit that straight to the README. So you can edit the README straight from the website. I'm obviously not going to save those changes. Now, up here in the code section, if you have this at a reasonable resolution, I don't think you need to click View Code, but we will view code right now. So the files that are in this repo give you all the information that you need to do the project. As you will see, there are 4 folders and 2 files. The first file here, the readme.md, that is the README that's down here. So when you're editing the README, that's the file that gets edited. Then there is the gitignore file. So the gitignore file is just, hey, this is a C++ project. Don't include things like precompiled headers or object files or temporary debugging files and stuff like that. So this gitignore file just makes sure that you don't commit those really large temporary files to your Git project. And then there are 4 folders. One of them is the project specification. I'll go over that in a bit. The project specification is just a README file that gives you the list of all the instructions for the project. And then the other 3 folders list the due date for that part of the project, as well as what that thing is. So for example, the project proposal is due on the 7th of November. So you have basically, I think, exactly 2 weeks to form your groups and propose a project. So what you do for that is you click on Project Proposal, and then you come down here, and it's project title, our project name. And so I'm just going to read all of the instructions as we go through them. That way, if I made any mistakes, I'll say them out loud and be able to correct them as we go, because there's a lot of text here, so I want to make sure. So the project proposal says, edit this file, and you'll edit it in the exact same way as the other one. All you have to do is click this edit button and then write it in Markdown. So your project proposal will be right on GitHub. I never have to download a file. I never have to look at a PDF or anything like that. Your whole project will be in this GitHub repo. It doesn't really matter who in your group is in charge of the GitHub repo. Just make sure you go into the project collaborators and add everyone in your group so that they can contribute to the repo without having to send you their code in a zip file and stuff like that. So use the repo as it was intended to do. So it says, edit this file to contain your project proposal. Use proper Markdown formatting. Your proposal will be reviewed to determine whether it is enough work or too much work for the scope of this course. So for example, if you say, we're going to do a platformer like assignment 3, and not much else will change, then that is not enough work for the project, okay? If you say, we're going to make an MMORPG that 1,000 users can connect to, and we're going to charge $14.99 a month, that's probably out of scope for this course, okay? So it's not written anywhere, but no networking is allowed in this project, okay? Because it'll just be a nightmare for you. Please just get the features done without thinking about multiplayer or networking. It should describe the following information and be approximately 2 to 3 pages, meaning screens, in length. So it should be pretty descriptive of your project. And I want you to plan your project as much as possible before you start it. So the game name, genre, overall theme, and main gameplay style. The acceptable types of gameplay style are going to be listed in the instructions, so I'll get to that in a bit. Examples of gameplay scenarios involving each of the game mechanics described below. So here's an edit. They are not described below. They are described in the project specification section. And a list of extra features of the game which have not yet been completed in the assignments. And that means that if your project is going to have something super special as a bonus, this is where you get to describe that. So I understand that whatever you describe here is going to be different from what you end up submitting, right? You may need to have a little bit more, you may need to have a little bit less, maybe some feature you didn't quite get working properly, right? If you're missing one of the 50 features that you need, you're not going to immediately fail the project, but this is what you're going to try to do. And I understand that over time, this is going to change. And as part of your final submission in your video, you're going to load up this proposal. You don't need to read through the whole thing, but you're just going to say, here's the differences between what we proposed and what we ended up actually getting to work. Okay, so that'll be like 1 minute if anything was changed in your final video. So this is just to make sure that you don't start on the wrong foot, right? I'm sure 90% of proposals that I've ever read have been fine. And if you do not see feedback from me, that means your proposal is fine. So about a week after the due date, I'll post, okay, I've looked at all the proposals, and if you don't have feedback, then it's fine. The way I will give feedback is that I will post an issue to your repo. So all the communication about the project is going to be done via the GitHub. So I'll just post an issue and say, hey, I think you need a little bit more in this part of the project, maybe a little bit less in this part of the project. Someone will give it a thumbs up and then close the issue and we'll be fine, okay? All right, so we'll go back to the root now. So that's the proposal, and that's due on the 7th of November. What I'm going to do next is, instead of clicking these folders, I'm going to read through the project specification. But basically, just 10 days before the final submission, I want to get a demo video of what you have done so far in the game. That demo is going to have to, oh, well, let me just click it. Why not? So what I want you to do is, in the project specification, there's a huge checklist of the features that you need to have in the game. So I want you to go to the project specification, copy that checklist into the demo, and then mark off the things that you got done for the demo. Hopefully, you've gotten about half to 2/3 of the things done if you only have 10 days left in the project. But I realize that that's not always the case. But the project demo, for the initial project demo, you must record a narrated 3 to 5 minute video showing your progress so far. The following features must be present in that demo. I want you to have the level editor working in the demo. So one of the very first things you should work on for the project is the level editor, because making the levels is what you need to do to test the game anyway. So the demo, that's kind of like, treat this as almost like assignment 5, right? There's no assignment 5, but this is almost like assignment 5, is getting that level editor working. It doesn't have to be 100% complete, but you should be able to create a new level, load a saved level, and save a level, okay? And so from what you've seen so far in the course, you can kind of get an idea for what this level editor might look like. You'll have an IMGUI window. You'll see all the assets. You'll be able to click them and either drag them or click onto your level to place them, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the level editor. And most of the gameplay mechanics. It turns out that I'd say 2/3 of the features that I've listed in the project specification, you will already have done in the assignments, right? And only about 1/3 of the content is actually new to the project. So this should be kind of free, but I do want to see some like working gameplay, playing through some of the levels, but not everything has to be complete. There are instructions for submitting the demo. There'll be 3 folders. These 3 folders are exactly the same as the 3 folders that you get for your assignments. So I just listed it here so that all the instructions are there. But basically, it's the same structure as your assignments. The important part is that you delete all of the temporary output directories. They contain like massive object files and stuff. And so the code and the project files for your assignment shouldn't be more than a couple of megabytes. If you're trying to push 300 megs to your GitHub repo, you know something is wrong. And if anyone in your group does that, you should make them feel bad, right? That's the only way people learn, is to make them feel bad about pushing so much to the GitHub repo. All right. Don't make them feel bad, but definitely tell them that they're wrong. So note that this setup is exactly the same as your course assignments. you may start the project by copying an assignment into this directory and then editing it. So for example, you can take assignment 3 or assignment 4. Assignment 4 is probably going to be a bit more feature complete. And then just copy that into this repo and start editing right from there. So there's no self-plagiarism in this course. Absolutely take one of your assignments and start the project by editing that assignment, right? So if you got 4 people in the group, take whoever's assignment was best and start editing the code from there, okay? This entire submission should be no more than a few megabytes at most without those temporary files. That is excluding the assets. So you're going to have sounds, you're going to have textures, and those will be several megabytes, of course, but that should be the vast majority of the size. Upon submission of the demo, please remove everything from the README besides the complete features section above. Excuse me. So what that means is, once you submit the demo, everything below here, just delete that. I don't need to read my own instructions again. Okay? It just makes it a bit cleaner. And the submission process for the final project is exactly the same. I keep scrolling past this view code. So the final project submission, this is due on the last day of exams. It is the last day that I can have you have it due and still maintain my sanity in marking them. I've got to mark all of these. There's 20-minute videos. There's code. It's a lot of work. That's the last day that I can make it due. And so some people tell me, yeah, but Dave, it's on the last day of exams. We all have exams, right? So like that kind of conflicts. Well, I could make it due before exams if you'd rather, right? And that usually makes people not complain so much. So I'm giving you as much time as physically possible to work on this with still having 2 or 3 days before the grades are actually required to be submitted. So that's why it's due on this date. It's the last day of exams. There's no late submission for the project. Now, okay, I'll let you know up front. Typically, I wait for the last day to make you all feel good. But I'm probably not going to be marking them until like noon the next day, right? So that last night, there's a lot of commits, we'll just say. I've seen that happen. Okay, so what you do for the final project submission is you go copy and paste that checklist again from the project specification, which we're about to go over, into this section, and just be honest. Show me all the features that you got working. Each of the features that you got working must be demonstrated in the final project presentation. If the feature is not in the video, it is possible that I may miss it in my playthrough, and it will be marked as incomplete. So I will play your game. Please don't make your game like one of these Kaizo, Mario, like, just let me finish the game. It's insane how hard you make some of the games. It doesn't need to be that hard. I'm looking for features, not to like hate myself. Like, it's like half the games I can't finish. It's crazy. It's like, yeah, we're gonna make that jump, like a pixel perfect jump. Why? Why do that to yourselves and me? Save that like bonus level somewhere. But it's just, let me finish the game, right? You want me to be able to see the features. But because sometimes I can't finish the game. I can't even get to the final boss sometimes. I'm probably just as good as anyone at a platformer here. Not to say you have to have a platformer, but there's some games I haven't been able to finish. So because of that, every single feature must be demonstrated in the video. And what I'm probably going to do, I haven't done it yet, but I'm probably going to give you a like template PowerPoint presentation file where I list, here's these features, and then on the next slide, you're going to record a gameplay clip and stick it into the PowerPoint presentation. And then I'll have all those things done for you, and all you have to do is stick in some video and then talk over the presentation while you record it. Because, man, there's such a crazy variance in the videos that I get. Some of the videos are like this immaculate Fortune 500 PowerPoint presentation that's like insanely good. And not to insult computer scientists, those usually come from the engineers in the class for some reason. I don't know what they're doing over there, but good job. You can do a presentation. I've gotten videos that are literally 100% gameplay footage. And as long as all the stuff is demonstrated, that's fine. But it's kind of hard to just talk for 20 minutes with no edits without some ums and ums. Please, please, share the good mic in the group. like make someone outside the group watch your video and then tell you if the mic is bad or not. It's mic quality. I know you don't have to have like a, Shure SM7B Joe Rogan monstrosity, but understandable, please. Please, okay. Also, you don't have to be Steven Spielberg. You don't have to be insert famous movie editor here who I don't know, but don't spend like 3 minutes trying to do something and making mistakes and then keep that in the video. Just edit that out. There are so many free movie editing, video file editing pieces of software out there now. If you've been and umming for 2 minutes and I've seen a lot longer than that, just cut it out and do it again. Okay, this is your final project presentation. There are some marks for actually being able to present the information to me. Ideally, it's partially what I want to see is like, I don't need to see code unless it's something really cool, right? If you implemented, so for example, in the last part of the course, I'm going to talk about like a memory pooling system that could speed up your game like 50x or something like that. If you end up doing that, you don't have to, hey, maybe show me some of the code for that. But don't spend more than 2 or 3 minutes showing me code. I'm going to be able to see your code. I want to see a description of the features that you have done, the gameplay footage demonstrating that, and then an explanation of the things that you tried to get done but aren't quite done. Okay, that's what I want to see in the project video. And I have the same code instructions here. Just a quick note, the YouTube link for the demo video and the presentation video should not be in this README. They should be back out in the main README. Okay, so all of your, oh geez, what did I do here? Yeah, so in the main README, that's where I want to see all of those videos. Okay, so now we get into the actual project specification. You can see by the length of the scroll bar, there's a lot to specify. That's just what happens in game programming. You've seen the length of the text files for the assignments, right? You've got to explain every single thing that goes on in the game. Sometimes it takes longer to explain the thing than it does to code the thing, right? But I want to be here because every piece of information that I include in this repo is one email or maybe 10 emails that I don't have to answer. So I'd rather put too much information than not enough information. So I'm going to read this whole thing. So, project specification. The final project for COMP4300 can be done in groups of up to 4 people, and I highly recommend 4 people for the group. I understand that students do not always enjoy working in groups for school projects, but the reality is this is how you will be working for the rest of your careers if you end up being programmers, is working with people. The ability to work with others in a reasonable manner is factored into your grade for the course. If you talk to any programming team manager who's worth their pay, they will tell you that it doesn't matter if you are John Carmack or a new grad. The most important thing that you can have at a company is the ability to work with other people and have them not hate you. And I'm not joking. You may laugh and say like, oh yeah, but like some programmer who's really good, doesn't matter. If you can't work with other people, you cannot be employed by that company. And that's not to say that there won't be arguments, disagreements, whatever, but 99% of the time, that's just because A, you actually care about the project. If there's someone who's not being passionate about the project, it means that they don't care, right? But just talk about it. Maybe have a vote on things if something can't be decided, right? So, in the next section, this is very important. If there are any problems with your group members not doing their fair share of the work, you must see me immediately. Now, I mean immediately once there's a problem, right? If you send someone an email, they haven't responded in 2 hours, okay, I don't need an email about that. But sometimes people do kind of disappear, right? People don't do their work, I get it. You must immediately see me so that we can work out a solution while there is still time to do so. I get people in 3 days left in the project. We haven't seen this person in our group for 3 weeks. Okay, your ability to have communicated that to me 2.5 weeks ago would have been able to solve this problem. But there's nothing we can do now except maybe give that person a 0 on the project. We can't go back in time in this course, so you've got to be upfront with me. Just send me an email. You're not snitching on anybody, okay? 99% of the time, so my observation over the years is that 99% of the time that something goes wrong like this, it is due to a simple miscommunication between group members that can be solved with just a couple of emails. If you wait until the final week before the project is due to come to me with these issues, there's probably nothing that can be done to help at that point. Everyone in this class is an adult, and part of the grade for your project is your ability to work with others to accomplish this goal. And I'm repeating this for a reason, because it's very important, okay? I understand that there's going to be someone in that group who has 10 years of experience with C++, and someone who just could barely finish assignment 3. There's going to be skill discrepancies in the groups, but you're going to talk about those skill discrepancies. You're not going to say, hey, I suck, give me the easy thing. You're going to say, hey, I particularly enjoyed doing this part of this assignment. I really like the concept of shaders. Let me do the shaders. Okay? I really like the particle system thing. Let me implement the particle system as a bonus thing. I love IMGUI. I'll take care of the level editor. All right? So, what I recommend is that every feature of the game, do I have this somewhere? No. So, every feature of the game should have 2 people working on it. Right? That way, if someone disappears, or if someone gets sick, or something happens, there's another person who knows what's going on. Okay? So every feature in the game, there should be 2 people assigned to that feature. Now you don't have to have like a document outlining exactly like a Gantt chart of features and release dates and scrums and all this kind of stuff and like daily stand-ups, but there should be some level of organization to the project. That does not need to be submitted to me, but if it is in the GitHub, cool. That's fine. But I'm not going to be monitoring that. Despite the length and feature scope of this project, which can look pretty scary, most of it has actually already been done in the assignments. You are allowed to copy any and all code from your assignments as a starting point for the course project. In this way, almost every line of code that you're writing for assignment 3 and 4 are being written for the project as well. So I have factored that into the amount of work level for this course. So if you're saying, hey, I've got assignment 3 to work on, I've got assignment 4 to work on, how am I supposed to start the project? You already are starting the project. From day 1 of this course, you have started the project. You're building the game engine that your project will use, and you're implementing all of these features, right? The same collision code for assignment 3, the same bullet code for assignment 3 is going to be in the project, probably. Okay. So the first actual instruction here, beyond the thing I wish I didn't have to say, but, not all of you have worked with a group before in a project setting, and I understand that, and I'm here for you. Just come to me. Seriously, in like 6 years of doing this course, I've only had 1 intergroup problem that could not be solved, and it ended up in the group splitting into 2 and 2 at the very end of the project. That's the only one time. Now, I've had people drop the course, and that kind of sucks, leaving someone with 3, but in that case, you come to me, and we'll talk about possibly reducing the scope, depending on whether or not they left, or maybe getting you another group member, or whatever. Whatever happens, it's not the end of the world. We will talk about it. We're all reasonable people. You're not just going to fail because something happened, unless you tell me about what happened the day before it's due. Okay, so please, please, give me ample room to help you try and solve your problem. Problems will happen to some of you. They won't happen to some of you, but we can solve all of them, I promise you. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is as soon as you've formed a group and created a GitHub repo, submit your GitHub repo URL on D2L. This must be done before the due date of the project proposal. All due dates are specified in the folder name in the root directory. So if we just go back real quick and we look at the code, November 7th, that is when the proposal is due. So you have to have submitted that URL to me before that. You can do that well in advance of the project proposal actually being due. And I suspect that a number of people will. And in fact, I don't even really need to look at that assignment Dropbox because I'm about to get like 400 GitHub notifications in the next week. It's kind of insane. Like as soon as you add me as a collaborator, I automatically get subscribed and I see all of your edits to your, so I have to go in and unsubscribe from everybody. But yes, make sure you follow those instructions. December 5th is when the demo is due, and December 15th, the last day of exams, is when the final project is due. So these folder names are when everything is due. Okay, the marking scheme. So there's several parts to this project. 5% for the project proposal. This is a free 5% as long as you write a few pages. Just do it, okay? I've had some people submit like one paragraph. We're going to make, a Mega Man clone, and Mega Man will be able to fly. You're just losing 5% for nothing if you do that, okay? Actually go through the feature list and say how the game will play out a bit. And in doing that proposal, which doesn't have to be the final product, think of it as kind of like a game design document, where if there's any arguments later, you can go back and say, hey, we said we were going to do this, right? The project demo is worth 10%, okay? The project code and me playing the game, that's worth 60%. Your final project video is worth 20%, and your YouTube game trailer is worth 5%. So the YouTube trailer, the reason I have this and a project presentation video is because you can very easily add your YouTube game trailer to your resume or portfolio, and employers will gladly watch a 2-minute video. They will not watch a 20-minute video. And I'm from Newfoundland. I have many friends in the industry, some of who are hiring and may actually hire you. And they've hired many of my previous students. And one of my friends says, Dave, I'm sick of looking at your videos. Because every student puts them on their resume. Now, but it's like one person got hired at a game company because of their game video, right? So it's cool. You get marks for doing that, right? If I told you, hey, this is something that you could do after the fact, none of you would do it. Because you're done the project, you don't want to ever look at it again, right? There's like PTSD from the project. But if I give you marks for it, you'll actually do it. So that's why I have it there. Important note, this is a game programming course. The final project game is the most important part of the course, being valued at 60% of the total course grade. Also, the course syllabus states that you must pass the final project to pass the course. The reason that's there is so you can't just get 100 on all the assignments, get 40% of the course grade, and then just submit some final project which is worth the rest of the 10%. You cannot do that to pass this class, okay? You must submit a project which has the vast majority of the required functionality completed. There is no other way to pass this course. It's a game programming course. You're making a game. Every year, 1 or 2 groups takes this warning lightly and puts off doing the project until the last minute. The result of doing this will be you failing the course. There is no way to get around this other than to do the work. Please take this project as seriously as any other final exam you have in any course, because it's basically the final exam, okay? And I know, I shouldn't have to say that, but some of you are going to be coming to me in the last minute with, your sick note from Maple or whatever to try and get out of doing the work. It's not going to happen. I'm giving you as much time as I can to work on the project. It is due on the final day of exams in order to give me just enough time to mark it before I'm required to submit your grades. There will be no extension of the due date and no allowance for late submissions of the project unless there is a serious medical emergency, and even then you will have to submit an exam deferral form with a medical note if that happens. I repeat, treat this as if it were a final exam. Some people just don't understand that, and it's very important. And I'm not trying to be like super serious guy, but I just don't want to have this conversation when it's too late at the end of the course. Okay, now into the actual instructions of the final project. This section details all the required functionality for your game. You can use it as a checklist to mark your game's progress by putting an X inside the square brackets in markup. And I'll show you what that means in a second. So here's the game overview. You must implement it as an ECS architecture in C++ using only the SFML and IMGUI libraries. Okay, so that's all you're allowed to use. You may use any course code already written for assignments as the basis for your project game. The game types that are allowed are 2D platformer, top-down shooter, action RPG, or similar theme. I do not want you to make a fully fledged RPG game. I have had someone try and do that. They got stuck on writing dialogue for a month, and then there was a mess. So make sure that your game is centered around gameplay and programming rather than huge story and asset creation. If 2D platformer is chosen, it must be significantly different from assignment 3. Last year, I literally had someone submit assignment 3 with the level that I gave for assignment 3 as their first level. Man, like, it has to be really different, okay? You cannot reuse any levels or any assets from the game. Now, if you, for example, want to say, I'm going to remake Mega Man 2 from the NES for our project, that's a great project idea, right? To get all those mechanics, different weapons and stuff, as long as it fits the scope. If that's the case, okay, you can use Mega Man, right? But what I mean is, you're not allowed to be just super lazy and just submit what you did for the assignments, the things that I already gave you. That is not acceptable at all. It must contain at least 3 pre-built levels and have a separate final boss level where the final boss has really cool gameplay mechanics. It's not just a Goomba that you jump on. Your game must allow a custom menu, or must have a custom menu that allows the player to play the game, edit the levels, or select options. So you have a main menu where you select, hey, play the game, or options, or level editor, etc. It must contain some sort of in-game menu. I give more details on that later, but for example, item selection, inventory, options, etc. It must contain a level editor for loading, editing, and saving of game levels. And the 3 levels that you have must be built with the level editor. So you're not hand coding the levels like I did for the assignments. Your levels must be able to be created with the level editor, with the exception of maybe some of the mechanics for the boss level. Okay, if you have like really specific mechanics for the AI, for the boss, okay, you can hard code the boss, but the levels, level geometry has to be created with the level editor. It must contain a game over scene so I can know if I've finished the game or not. All levels, player, and game configuration options must be defined in external text files. And all assets should be gathered or created by project group members. Okay? So you do not have to sit there in MS Paint creating your own assets. You can if you want. I've had groups that do that. But don't just have one person who their only job is creating assets. Don't let them get away with that. Okay? They have to do some of the programming as well. It's a game programming course. So you have to get assets from somewhere. There are lots of free assets out there. There's even more paid assets out there. But you shouldn't have to spend a dime if you don't want to on the course. Game scenes. So there are going to be different scenes in the game. You're getting like a sneak preview of that in assignment 3. Give me 1 second. So your game must have the following scenes. A main menu scene that is going to implement the main menu and options functionality. An overworld map scene that allows for level selection and game progression. So if you ever played Super Mario 3 for the NES, or Super Mario World, or Cuphead, or any game where you walk around on a map to select which level to play, you're going to have that in your game. You can, if necessary, hard code the overworld map. The overworld map doesn't have to be created with the level editor. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. That's the only exception. Okay? So you have an overworld map where you walk around and select which level to play. And I'll talk about it later. You're going to have some progression system where I need to beat that level before I'm allowed to beat that level, before I'm allowed to beat that level, before I'm allowed to face the boss. So all that's got to be done somehow. There's going to be a main gameplay scene that implements like the actual playing of the game. Some sort of item inventory or in-game, I don't know what that even says, menu scene.
Menu scene?
Yeah, maybe. Okay, so an in-game menu. This was written before we started using IMGUI. So an in-game menu does not have to be its own scene, but it's just telling you there must be some sort of in-game menu to do things. The level editor scene, that's separate from the gameplay scene, and a game over scene with some sort of animation or credits or whatever. Here's the main meat of it, the required gameplay and mechanics. Your game must contain all of the following mechanics. You may copy and paste and edit this list for use in your proposal if you want to. So for example, in your proposal, you can say, here's all the features, and then go through each one. Collisions. How is our game going to handle collisions? Well, you can bounce into the walls, you can land on tiles. Movement, you're going to be able to move around with WAS and D. Maybe you can boost with this thing. So you can use this list in your proposal if you want to. So here's all the features. What I've done here is in markup in GitHub, there are actual checkboxes. Unfortunately, you can't just check it. What you do is you go into Edit, like this. Then, wherever you see one of these, you do this. And then that will be a checked box when you go back to the actual wiki. So as you're implementing features, just use this, copy this over into the demo file and then use it as a checklist for your group. So that's how you edit that. Yes, I want to discard them. Okay. So that's how you edit this. So the first feature is collisions. As you can see, a lot of this stuff has been done in assignments already. So I want rectangular bounding box collisions between some entities and some collision between the player and the level geometry. That's already been done in the assignments for you. If you want to do something cool with collisions, that can be part of the optional bonus stuff. Like if you want to have circle-circle collisions like a pool table or something like that, you can do something like that. Movement. Your game must contain at least 2 movement abilities which have a cooldown or a resource cost. So what I've done here, wherever I say your game must have X of Y, I've put in some example stuff. You are going to edit this to actually describe what you have done in your game to implement that. But I've just included some examples. Please don't leave my examples there because they're not what you have done. You don't need to have example 1 here. Like example 1, we did this. Example 2, we did this. I'm putting that there to make sure you know that that's my example text. So some movement abilities you can think about. A double jump. So I can jump once while I'm in the air. A dash. So maybe I can dash or roll through something like in the Dark Souls games. Maybe I have a wall jump. So while my character is pressed up against a wall, I can jump off the wall. Maybe I have a jetpack that has fuel in it. Something like this. So you have to come up with 2 movement abilities for your game. Bullets and weapons. You must have at least 3 unique weapons that are usable by the player. I will tell you now that having a revolver and a 9mm gun are not 2 unique weapons. Okay? If you have different projectile weapons, they must be significantly different. You can't just have different types of guns. So, here's some examples. A boomerang. I throw it, it goes out, it gets returned to me. Another one, a shotgun. Several bullets come out of it. Or a sword, a melee weapon, a flamethrower, something unique. Okay? Someone had a game once where you didn't actually kill anything, right? I think it was like you were in the school and you had a pencil and the pencil killed the exam NPC, right? Like, come up with something cool. There doesn't need to be a lot of violence in this game. There's all sorts of different things that you can do, lots of creative things that people have done in the past. Also, on my website, there is a link to previous trailers for games for this course. So if you're stuck for ideas, go watch some of those trailers for the games. Weapons must be swappable during gameplay via a hotkey or a UI element. So if you've ever played a game before that says, here's the weapon I have equipped, here's the ammo that I have, I can maybe press 1 through 4 to cycle through my different weapons. Same thing in your game. At least one weapon must consume ammo that is obtainable during gameplay. So not infinite ammo, not only melee weapons. You've got to be able to pick up something like gas for a flamethrower, bullets for a gun, etc. NPCs. You're going to have at least 3 unique non-player characters in the game that act as enemies or allies. They must contain some basic AI such as pathfinding, shooting, patrolling, or battling with the player. And each NPC is going to have a unique weapon or method for interacting with the player. So you can't just have all your NPCs be patrolling Goombas. Okay? They've got to be unique in some way. Moving tiles. Some part of the level has to move. You could have an elevator or a platform that goes back and forth, etc. You've just got to have that somewhere in your level. Hit points and damage. The player and enemies in the game should have hit points, life, and take damage and die. Now, if you don't want to be a violent game, you could have like the equivalent of that in your universe, right? So maybe you blow bubbles at somebody and they get annoyed and run away. Like it's got to be numbers. You deal numbers, number go down, thing go away when number 0. Okay? Invincibility frames must be implemented for all entities that take damage. This will be talked about in assignment 4. Invincibility frames, essentially, if you have 2 things that collide, right, by a frame or by a few pixels, they're going to take damage somehow. If all you do is check every frame of the game for a collision and then apply damage, then the 2 things will be taking damage every frame, 60 times per second, and basically instantly die, no matter how much damage they deal. And that's true in every game, pretty much. And the way most games deal with that is to implement a cooldown period for damage, or invincibility frames, or iframes they call them, where I can only be hit once per second. And then after I'm hit, maybe I'm blinking or I'm transparent, and I can move around without being able to be damaged, so I can get away from that enemy without being hit again immediately. So you've got to implement that. And enemy HP levels must be displayed to the user in some way. So in assignment 4, we'll have hit point health bars over the enemies' heads, and so that'll be just a feature that you already have. Status effects. Your game must contain at least 3 separate, unique status effects. So you can't have one status effect that does double damage, and another one that does triple damage, and another one that does quadruple damage. They have to be unique. Status effects must be obtainable in some way in the game. So either it's an item that you pick up that you can use, maybe collision with a fountain, or some ability that creates the status effect, which alter the gameplay for a limited amount of time. For example, you could have a speed potion. After I use the speed potion, for 20 seconds, I can run twice as fast. Quad damage. So if you've ever played Quake, there's an item you pick up, you deal 4 times as much damage. Or from Mario, an invincibility star, where you run into things and you kill them when you touch them. So that's the status effects. At least 3, objects in inventory. At least 3 different items should be obtainable during the game via some sort of interaction, either collision or ability use, etc. The UI should display an inventory of these items and allow for their use after obtaining them. So what this means is you can't just run it, like in assignment 4, it's Zelda, you'll be able to run into a heart to refill your life. That is like an immediate action where you touch it and it has its effect. In the game that you're making for the project, you have to collect an item and then be able to use the item later. So it will show up in your inventory. You can use IMGUI for your inventory if you want, and you click it, and then you use the item. So for example, maybe you have a health pack that you pick up that you can use later to regain HP. Maybe you hold on to that sprint potion or that speed potion so that you can use it in a dangerous section, or you have some sort of teleportation scroll that brings you back to a specific location, something like that. Raycasting and visibility. We'll have a lecture on this later. It will be part of assignment 4. Raycasting calculations should be used in some form for the game for either a lighting effect or a visibility effect. Our game's functionality is, for example, this turret fires when an enemy enters the line of sight of the turret, or some player torch illuminates areas within line of sight. This is supposed to be and, not or, so I will fix that. You have to have, so because raycasting is already done in assignment 4, like it's just going to be there, it's going to be, that code is going to be available for a turret-like thing. So for example, in assignment 4, a certain enemy is going to come toward you if they can see you, right? So that's already done. So the second one is some sort of basic lighting effect, and I'll have an entire lecture on how you can accomplish lighting effects using this. Gravity or acceleration. There must be some form of gravity or attractor in the game that applies acceleration to players. So for example, if you're making a top-down Zelda-like or Diablo-like RPG game, maybe you could have a gun that shoots a gravity well, that sucks enemies into it, right? If you're doing a platformer, then okay, gravity's already done for you, that's pretty easy. Camera or, yep.
In your example there, you said like it sucks the enemies in, but the checklist there says specifically applies it to the player.
Okay, so you're right. I'm going to say that applies to any entity. So I'll end up changing that. But if it applies to the player, then it applies to everybody. Or it applies to an entity, so it's fine. Camera or worldview. We will have a lecture on this. Your game must use at least 2 different camera views in an interesting gameplay-related way. So for example, you could have one of the views is already done for you. That's going to be your main gameplay view that you already use. And then maybe your second one is a mini-map of some of the local area that shows the player's position, right? So you have a map, and you can see yourself like up in the corner moving around in this mini-map that maybe only displays the tiles of the game in a very small window, but not the actual enemies, or something interesting like that. We'll have a whole lecture about that. Pathfinding or steering. We'll have a whole lecture about this. Some entities in the game must exhibit non-trivial pathfinding and smooth steering behavior. And non-trivial pathfinding, we'll get into that, but basically something in your game must be smart enough to not just walk into a wall. Okay? So example 1, heat-seeking missile smooth steers towards the target. So if it's chasing me around, it's actually moving and like turning rather than just like being super jittery. Or some sort of pathfinding algorithm is used to guide some sort of NPC toward the player. Like if you're making a Diablo-like game, you could use some sort of pathfinding to make sure the zombie can get to your character. Game progression. The overworld map should somehow lock or unlock game progression based on levels that have been completed. You must have the ability to save and load your progress somehow to a file. And I don't just want a big save button that you can hit at any time or a big load button that you can hit at any time. It has to be triggered by something or be worked into the gameplay mechanics. Shaders. I will have an entire lecture on shaders. At least 3 shaders must be used to alter entity appearance in a meaningful way. And in a meaningful, unique way, so you can't just have one shader that turns something red, one shader that turns something green, and one shader that turns something blue. I'll have a whole lecture on this. You can just download shaders from somewhere, but you have to apply them in the game. So for example, maybe you freeze something and the enemy just turns gray, like Medusa freezes an enemy, they turn into stone. Maybe they have a glowing outline if they're radioactive or something. Maybe they're on fire, etc. Or maybe Mario is alternating through colors when it has a star effect or something like that. So shaders can do a lot more than just visual effects, but that's basically all I'm going to be teaching them in this course, because the whole course would be about shaders if we wanted to really get into it. Parallax. Parallax is an effect where you could have like 2 different layers of background that move at different rates, right, to show some sort of depth. We'll have a lecture that talks about this. Your game must incorporate parallax via multiple background layers in some way in your game. If you can figure out how to do parallax, maybe not background layers, but foreground layers or whatever, that's fine, as long as you have some sort of parallax in the game. And so, just an example, we have background layers that move at different speeds to indicate depth in our level. User interface or heads-up display. You must have a user interface which displays information such as the player health, weapons and ammo, the game progression, status effects or timers or cooldowns of weapons, and any other UI elements that you need. Audio. Your game must have background music during gameplay and menu scenes. We'll be doing this for assignment 4. And you must have unique sound effects that occur when something happens in the game. Yep.
Can we just rip off music from other games?
I don't. This is educational purposes, so yeah.
So is that a yes or no?
I don't care where you get your music from.
Okay.
But this is a private repo. Just remember that, okay? Now, you may not want to go up against like Taylor Swift's legal team, but if you use a sound effect from Mega Man, I don't care. Okay.
I am more scared of Nintendo.
Well, you should be fine as long as all you do is create this like YouTube trailer that 5 people in the world are going to see, right? Just don't sell your game. Then you'll be in trouble. Options. Must have an options menu that allows you to change the following settings. This is important. Some people skip this and try and get away with it. I'm not letting you. So music and sound effects volume, they are 2 different sliders. So you should be able to turn off the music, change the volume of the music. Game difficulty. So your game is going to have different difficulties. You can implement whatever difficulty type thing that you want. However, the thing that I suggest as the easiest, a normal difficulty, an easy difficulty, for example, you deal double the damage and you take half the damage, or hard, where you deal half the damage and take double the damage. Okay? So you have to have 3 difficulties, easy, medium, hard, or something else along those lines that's more clever than this if you want to. And you have to be able to rebind or remap the gameplay scene keys. So for example, by default, you may have W, A, S, and D as moving up, down, left, and right, but you have to be able to, in the menu, change the key that is bound to those actions. Okay? I know that's kind of annoying or boring, but it's part of game programming. Every part of a game is game programming. Assets. You cannot use any assets that were given out in the course, especially not the levels that I gave you, and only with valid exceptions are you able to use any of the assets that I gave you. You do not have to create assets from scratch. You can obtain them online. If you obtained assets online, please cite the sources of the assets. So if you downloaded them, just put it in the GitHub. Hey, here's where we got our assets, just so I know that. Extras. 10% of the mark. So if you did everything that I just said, you get a 90. 10% of the grade is for your chosen extra stuff that isn't here. Okay? We implemented a dialogue system. You can talk to NPCs and choose stuff. We implemented a replay system where you can save replays and play them back in the game. 10%, or we have like a particle system. I have a whole lecture on particle systems. Also, this year, I'm allowing you part of this mark in the development process. Okay? So we had unit tests for our game. I know that's a bad word. Unit tests can get you some bonus marks. We had this really nice IMGUI debugging screen where everything in the game was debuggable. Maybe some other things. So anything bonus that is not listed here that you went above and beyond is part of that 10%. I wish that I could give you like some objective marking scheme for that 10% bonus, but it's kind of hard, as you can imagine. But at any time, you can come to me and say, hey, what do you think of this? Right? Is this enough? Is this not enough? And we can talk about it. For example, maybe some really complicated lighting effect, or a currency system that allows you to buy from shops in the game. So maybe you buy your items after you collect gold or something like that. I didn't list that as a required feature. That could be part of the bonus. Fancy NPC AI that goes above and beyond. So maybe some really complicated pathfinding system that lets 1,000 NPCs come towards your player or whatever. So those are required gameplay mechanics. Level editor. Your game must contain a level editor similar to the one found in the Mega Man Maker or Super Mario Maker game. I'll be demonstrating that a bit later when we get to the tools lecture. Okay, so I'll show an example of that. All of your main gameplay levels must be able to be made from within the level editor, but the overworld map can be hard-coded if necessary. The level editor should operate on a grid similar to the one found in assignment 3 and 4. Once I start talking about the level editor in the lectures, I'll explain more of that. The level editor must be made mostly with the IMGUI library. Okay, so you can have a mixture of IMGUI and non-IMGUI code, but I do want to see, for example, here's a list of the assets. I can click them and drag them over. Last year and all the previous years, we weren't using IMGUI, and the level editor was like, it's actually kind of tricky to implement without a UI library. And so people had interesting systems where, for example, okay, if I click C, that will create an entity and put it on my mouse cursor. Then I can use the mouse wheel to select the type of entity that I want to put in and stuff. So people had to be creative. This year, you're getting off easy with the level editor, I think. The required functionality from the level editor, it allows you to select an existing level to edit. So, for example, you're going to be able to list the text files that are associated with levels and load one, save one. The ability to place any texture or animation that's defined in the assets file into the level, that will actually be surprisingly easy. Any parameters of specific entities must be editable via the level editor. This is going to be probably the trickiest part. So, for example, whether entities block vision, movement, or whatever, this is going to be done as part of assignment 4, but you're going to have to be able to edit them in the level editor. So when you put a new entity in the level, you're going to be able to select it somehow and then say, hey, this blocks movement, this blocks vision, or this is a patrolling AI, or whatever. The hit points and damage of NPCs in the level. So this NPC deals 3 damage when it touches the player. It has this much armor, it has this many hit points. That's all editable in the level editor. And if it is a moving NPC that has patrol points, for example, you're going to be able to click somewhere in the UI and say, like, set patrol points, and then click the patrol points, and it will all be editable. So the level editor has to be able to do all of that, and now you're starting to see why I'm saying do the level editor first, because it's going to be a significant amount of work, and it's going to enable the creation of levels for your game. Okay, so that's the level editor, that's the functionality. The project report video must contain, your project must contain a video report or presentation. 10 to 15 minutes, I don't know why it says that. It should be 15 to 20 minutes. That's typically about the sweet spot for the video. An overview of all of the game, giving all details described in the game overview above, including asset sources, a description of all the extra features put into the game. It's going to demonstrate all of the game mechanics. Again, I'm basically watching your video with the checklist in front of me, doing this. Okay, so if it's not in the video, I may not see it. A detailed list of the controls for the game and how to play the game and what the objectives are. That's surprisingly missing sometimes. Notes on anything you tried to implement and didn't get up working. The video must contain audio commentary and explanation. You're not going to have this like unregistered HyperCam 2 like, you know, notepad typing video. Someone is talking on the video. Ideally, to make it fair, everyone in the video talks about the thing they did, but sometimes that's hard to do. It's hard to manage and edit together. I get that. It is not required for everyone to speak. If you want to nominate one poor soul who has the best radio voice to do it, that's fine, but I would prefer to see multiple people speaking about what they did. And then post the video report URL to the README of the main project repo. I know that this is probably the most complicated description of a project you've ever been given, but again, this is what the whole course is about, not just a project. So you saw at least 2/3 of that stuff is done in assignment 3, and well, you haven't seen assignment 4 yet. But I promise you, at least 2/3 of it is assignment 3 and 4. And so you're basically going to have the level editor, shaders, like steering, pathfinding, lighting, like just a few features on top of what you've already done, and then put it into the game that you think about. So, any questions about the project at all, please ask them now in the back.
So about the special weapons, for example, we have a jetpack and a gun.
That's not a weapon.
It's not a weapon.
Jetpack's a movement, yeah.
Like something special which the player collects
Yes.
So, like, for example, I have 3 of those. Should all 3 of them be in the same level, or it can be spread out in like 1 to 1?
That's up to you, as long as they're demonstrated in the video. Yeah, so I shouldn't have to play your game for an hour and a half to see the 3rd level. I want to see it in the video. Yep.
Not specifically about the project itself, but related. Does Visual Studio have a similar extension as VS Code does for interacting with GitHub?
I believe so. I have never used it, but as I'm editing, sorry guys, you're a bit loud back there. If you have to talk, just whisper. While I'm editing my code, I can see icons changing in Visual Studio, indicating which files have changed. And then, yeah, but I don't know, I've never used any built-in Git pushing or pulling. I just use, like on Windows, I just use GitHub Desktop. It's fine. It's just a UI where you can say, get me the new stuff, or get me the old stuff, commit the new stuff. It's like, it's fine. And from
VS Code, the extension just lets you select a folder and it connects it directly to the URL for your Git repo. So in VS Code itself, it'll show you like basically everything. And if you have it, do like set amount of updates just to see.
So, okay, to make this, my real answer is do whatever you want to get it into Git. I'm not going to be officially supporting one way or another. As long as you can get the code and then commit the code, I don't care what you do. Yeah, but I don't know the answer to the Visual Studio question.
I found Visual Studio works really well. It's all built in.
Perfect.
You'll need to sign into your GitHub account. But yeah.
Any other questions about the project? Okay. Not to single anyone out, but if you are still looking for people for your project, for your group, just raise your hand. Okay, turn around, look. No, keep your hands up. Okay, I'm finished the lecture. Feel free to take this time to mingle, talk about the group. You've got about 4 minutes. I get 8 minutes officially before leaving the room. But please see those people who had their hand up. And if you don't find someone by the end of this lecture, that's okay. But send me an email by the end of the day, and I will assign you to groups. Okay, so I'll make a D2L post saying, if you have a group looking for people, or if you're a person looking for a group, let me know, and I'll just start pigeonholing people into groups. Any questions about the project, just ask me sooner rather than later. As I said before, give ample time. Like, don't come to me the day before the proposal and say I need a group. You're supposed to be working on the proposal with your group, right? So just come to me soon rather than when it's too late. If there's no other questions, that's it. And I hope most people kind of have fun with the project, even though it is a bit of work. It's a nice feeling at the end when you've made something that you're proud of that you can show off to family members. And if they have Windows, you just send them the file and they can play the game and stuff. It's pretty cool. That's it.